Welcome to Late Night at the Movies.
Episode 2.
Two. Sorry.
Welcome everybody to Late Night at the Movies. I think Jay forgot what episode it was there at the start there for a moment.
I knew I was missing something, man.
I
It
think
didn't sound right when I was saying it.
I know it's a new one that you got to learn now. Since this is only our second episode. So welcome back everybody. We hope some of you guys were able to watch this movie before watching today, or whenever you do end up watching this live or otherwise. I'm going to try to encourage people to maybe check out, like I said, the movies that we talk about, because they're all going to be older movies that we've already both seen before. That's the theme of kind of this show, is us revisiting them, in a lot of cases years later, to re-examine them and do a deep dive conversation on it and see if our thoughts have changed, or I know Jay's for this movie, for instance, we'll get into it here in a moment, definitely has.
Yeah, if you're still as confused as fuck as I am.
I think it was a great intro song, by the way, from the end of the film, and by the Pixies there. And also, I think Jay can relate quite a bit to that song as well.
Oh, amigo.
Where was your mind at the start of this one?
No, it's a great movie, man. I mean, it's fun to watch, and I mean, I think I can watch it 100 more times and still have a hard time figuring it out and putting it together. It actually worked out that it actually played this week apparently on regular television or whatever it was. So
yeah, I didn't know that.
I didn't realize that. Neither did I. It kind of was good timing if people were watching and clued in, and everybody got to, maybe if they wanted to watch it, take a look at it, and it was actually on television, which was funny.
Yeah, and the movie we're talking about in question, of course, is Fight Club. We rewatched Fight Club, which you should already know by now if you've if you're tuning in, or like you saw our post, or whenever you end up checking this out. So Fight Club. Let's before we get into it here, let's talk about maybe our history with the film. Did you watch this when it originally came out, Jay? Were you kind of like one of these guys that had heard about the film years later and end up checking it out, or do you recall kind of when you saw this?
I did watch it. I'm almost pretty sure that around the same time it came out. I've watched it a couple times, to be honest with you, since then. Maybe not as maybe I hadn't paid attention like as much as I had to do for this time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just one of those fast-paced movies and back and forth, so it was a little bit hard to follow, but interesting at the same time because there was a lot of shit going on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I've rewatched it, like I said, maybe twice since it came out. This was probably the second time since it came out, or maybe third. But it's just as crazy as when I first seen it, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's held up pretty well. In most cases, I got a couple of nitpicks we'll get into once we kind of get into the categories here. Believe it or not. But I think that it's one of those movies I think I watched as a teenager for the first time. And like when I was really getting into other different types of films, you know what I mean? Like, this was just always one that you heard about that was like a really cool movie. You know, obviously Brad Pitt, huge at this time. You know, a lot because of it's interesting because we talked about the Mark Maron episode where Mark Maron talked to him and Leo when they were promoting the film, the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood Quentin Tarantino film. And if you recall, he actually talked about this movie bombing at the time of release, and he got stoned as he watched the film when he was in the theaters for the first time, right? And apparently people were leaving the theater like pissed off. He said like they didn't like it. And like in a way, it's a pretty grim. Again, we'll get into it though. It is kind of, you know, it is kind of pretty dark. It's definitely dark humored. Chuck Palahniuk, I think that's how you say his last name. It's the guy who wrote the novel Fight Club is known for like writing a lot of fucked up books like with a lot of dark humor. From what I understand. So I've never read the book. Christine has. She was telling me a bit about it, and I had looked up some things, some main differences in preparation for this today, kind of from the book to the movie. And there's not too much. There's some key things, I guess, but I think all decisions that were made for the film were pretty good ones.
Pretty much based on the book, eh?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty close adaptation of like what was like. I mean, from anything from like his, you know, the whole Fight Club speech. Anyways, let's get into it because yeah, I mean, like we both said, we can give our other thoughts on the film overall outside of the categories by the end of this or as we go through. But you know, I just quickly wanted to you know, go over kind of what our history is with the film. I've seen it many times. Like I've seen it probably a handful of times, like, you know, at least 5-6 times. It's been like, it's been at least, you know, probably several years since I saw it last. It was one of those ones that the twist in it was really shocking the first time you watched it. So, rewatching it now, it's a little bit, you know, that surprise gets taken away to a certain degree, right? But that's why it's one of those things that you got to watch it multiple times the first time you check it out. Like it's one of those ones like, okay, now I got to go back and rewatch it from a different lens. You know what I mean? Like I got to like, now I got to like watch the scenes and stuff like that. And again, going into it this time and knowing kind of what we're kind of observing this time around, I was able to kind of take that moment to see how he kind of did it in this film, right? So like David Fincher, the director, like, you know, what I was trying to see if they slipped up, you know. So anyways, without further ado, let's get into the categories. We got categories here that help us break up the conversation, everybody. And basically
not easy categories, to go with this movie. I think it was kind of hard because there was a lot of stuff in each category, to be honest with you, to kind of pick from, you know?
Yeah.
And to follow, to be honest with you. I mean,
well, that's why I'm glad you said the same thing that I said. Like when you messaged me that you were having trouble with some of the categories while I was watching the movie, I felt the same. Like I was able to kind of still do do most of the categories, but at the same time, it's like I felt like this isn't a film, which going into it, I didn't realize till this viewing. Like it's taken me a while to realize this, I think, about the film, because there is, of course, iconic scenes from it, that memorable scenes everyone references and lines. But I don't think it's a movie that, you know, other than the main one, which, you know, everyone fucking knows about this film. I don't think it's like a very quotable movie. Like I got several written down, but I don't know about how you feel, but I didn't feel it was like a very super quotable fit. Like it's not a film where it's more about concept and like the idea behind it and like the segments of like, it's not even like small scenes that are really good. Like there is, but it's mostly like big chunks of the film that you're like, yeah, that's a big fucking good chunk of the film. You know what I mean? When I was writing down scenes, which is our first category actually, which we'll get into right now. This was difficult for me, scenes, because I'm like, there's so many good scenes, but it's like how do you separate any of those scenes? You know what I mean? Like it's not, I don't know, like the way he set the movie up, it's not it doesn't go through the same story beats, I think, that you normally would get from a lot of films. Like it gets kind of all over the place purposefully, I'm sure, because of the whole schizo angle and the whole, like, right from the start of the film, you start seeing Brad Pitt, like maybe a few minutes in, being spliced into the background. And before you even know it, they go on to describe his job at night, where he's doing that with sex organs in films and like kid films and shit like that. But you don't make that connection. Like the first time you have watched that, you don't make that connection. You're like, what the fuck was that? If you even notice it. But then they go on to reference the thing you've even witnessed already so far in that film. That's a hint towards the schizo part of this character. And you don't even realize it, that they're basically telling you like what you're kind of already watching and what's developing in the story. So that's what I mean. Like, it's more impressive for those reasons, I think, the film, than it is like, oh yeah, there's all these great moments with great people, and like there's like, you know, 1,000 different quotes. Like when we watched the last movie you watched, Departed, you know, it's Jack Nicholson time. Like every single fucking piece of dialogue he has was awesome in that film, but it's not. This is a little bit different. This one, I find, like, I don't know.
No, I know exactly what you mean. They add little splices into the beginning of the movie that carry on into the rest of the movie. That actually, I mean, if you notice, you see some of those guys through his daily routine. Like Brad Pitt pops up there. You know, you see him before he actually meets him. It's kind of weird though, because Edward Norton doesn't really have a name, right? So a lot of it's
the narrator. Yeah, he's referred to as the narrator essentially in the book as well. Like when I was looking up the differences in the book, they even say they refer to him as the narrator. Like and Tyler Durden. Essentially, if you're going to call him anything, it's Tyler Durden, but you don't even know that because they never really they jump right into it. So for best scenes, let's get into it. For best scenes, I put a question mark here. One of the best intros ever. Like the introduction to his character at the start of the film, great.
You're
like
at the bar.
No, not Tyler Durden. I'm talking about Edward Norton.
Yeah, when he's explaining.
And then I also wrote down introduction to Tyler Durden. Like both of these guys' introductions is like, you know, like a good quarter of the film. Like, but just like the way they jump right into it, like with the Edward Norton thing, with the whole intro, with the whole, I have insomnia. Like even they're already explaining to you the stuff that he's suffering from that basically leads into the whole Tyler Durden character, which you don't really even know at this point, because you're trying to follow along. You're like, okay, this guy's really obsessed with material wealth. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where they're criticizing like how people, things define them. You know what I mean? Like, and like, and the commercialism is a huge part about this film, like all the way to the end with the fucking credit card companies being destroyed and all that shit. Like, it's a huge theme, right? And
with the whole financial industry, everything like that. They're making that whole big thing about it, but you don't know that until the end. You don't really you hear bits and pieces of it throughout the movie and what they're doing stuff for, but you don't know about it until near the end, right?
Yeah. But yeah, the introduction to both these characters, excellent fucking introductions. Like, I mean, yeah, I guess you could say the more fun one is Brad Pitt's, the Tyler Durden character, just because all the wacky shit that he tells you that he does for jobs at night, which you find out is actually the main character, Edward Norton's character, who's doing all these weird jobs at night, opposite of his daytime job as like one of those like risk assessment guys or some shit, like a one of those insurance like insurance company type things. Yeah. So for a car company, I guess, right? Isn't that he works for like a big one?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for a beating, they never actually say the name of the company, right?
Right. And if that wasn't as interesting an angle enough for you already this far into the film with the whole insomnia thing and the whole kind of like he's kind of like a quirky character, then you get into the whole other part of it with him, with the using support groups as some sort of a fucking like using them and lying to people.
Crutch.
Sorry?
It's almost like a crutch. Like he's doing it to help to kind of feel better about himself, right?
Yeah.
and try to figure himself out, because that whole insomnia thing that plays a big part in this whole movie, and you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
That how much that his whole insomnia and what you're introduced to in the beginning of the movie, and his whole speech, basically in the beginning of the movie, is basically describing what his problem is. And if you're not really paying attention to that, it's hard to follow the rest of what's going to happen and where it's leading on to in the movie, right?
Right. But because also at this point in time, he isn't even consciously aware that this other personality of his, the Tyler Durden, even exists, right? Like it comes to a certain point in his life where he's basically coming back, I guess being burned out essentially and not being able to sleep for so long, and coming back on a plane on one of his work jobs, that he finally encounters Tyler on the plane, right? And then from there, he had already set up this whole scenario prior to going on the trip where his apartment would blow up and he would be forced to go and stay with Tyler in this shit fucking hole, which is essentially just some place that he found that he's just, you know what I mean? Like just staying in, like that on that paper street, right? That whole, like that abandoned fucking building. That's like,
it's just like an old crack house, it looks like.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, right? Like, I mean, I know they have a lot of houses like that in the States that are old and beaten up like that, and they're just sitting there, right?
Yeah. So all this stuff is being set up and is already in motion before you even realize that it's happening. And I think it's really well done, because as you're trying to focus on the introduction of these characters, you really don't know what's already in play, right? Like you don't know, you haven't connected the dots as to, who these people are. And like the first time I watched this film, I had no indication that he was schizo. But then afterwards, it is something that becomes pretty clear if you're looking for it. But again, the number one being how he's being spliced into the fucking thing when he's suffering from insomnia, and he's just like flickering in his head, essentially, like he's seeing him but doesn't realize it. So it's already like pouring out of him slowly.
Mm-hmm. The first time, do you remember the first time you actually recognized or actually noticed the Brad Pitt character, Tyler Durden? Did you actually remember the first scene, like where he kind of first got a glimpse of him, but you never really see his face? Is when they're in the airport, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
he's going one way, and he's going the other way, right? But he was talking about how with insomnia and and the stuff that he deals with, that stuff gets spliced into your daily routine, and you don't even realize it pops in and out of your head. And he goes, you don't even know sometimes when you're sleeping or when you're awake, right? So that was the first time that I had visually seen Brad Pitt there pop into the movie, in the sense of, before he first met him, you know what I mean? When he's narrating the whole thing, when Norton's narrating the whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought, to be honest, that when he was doing that whole narration in the beginning about schizophrenia and stuff like that, and how they were kind of saying different things pop in and out of your life, and then you would see Marla and stuff like that, that crutch there, what do they call it? Vacate tourist? Is that what they call them?
Yeah, he said he was called. A tourist. Yeah, he says he confronts her when he finds out that she's been showing up to multiple different groups, and he's like, "Listen, I can't cry for real if you're here, and I know that you're also doing what I'm doing. I won't be able to genuinely, and I won't be able to sleep." Like, because he actually said he it solved his insomnia for a short period of time, finding this fucked up way, which is also probably the first time, like I've seen it, I think, in other things since this film, but it was the first time I think I've seen something in like a movie or something like that where they actually took like the whole thing about people taking advantage of support groups like this. Like I never thought, like maybe it could have been done before this, But for me, I think that was the first time I've ever seen that in like in a film or a TV or something. You know what I mean? Like this is, I think, the first time I encountered something like that. So interesting angle to take for the character.
Well, I know what you mean there because I mean, even up till now, I think that's the only time I've ever seen it like that too, right? So, like an introduction like that to the character, right? So, I mean, that kind of I didn't even know those kind of people existed in the sense that there was people that actually uh, go and are called tourists for support groups, and they go in there and they just scope out the scene. I mean, it makes you wonder, like, do you want to go to a support group if you might think that somebody else there is
if you want to see if you want to see another fucked up concept that this writer who wrote the book Fight Club did that it was also made for film, you should watch the movie Choke. If you've never seen that, we won't get into it here, but look that up after this. It's called Choke.
Choke?
Yeah.
I think I've heard the name before. I'm not sure about the movie itself.
It's a movie based off another book that this guy did. So if you want to see another weird, fucked up concept that this guy came up with in another one of his novels, check that out. So.
Well, then they say that other one too. Remember that movie that was called Crash as well. Like they all have something similar to those. Remember the one where it was like some sort of you would get into those car accidents, they were having sex or whatever afterwards, they get that adrenaline rush.
I don't know if that's
I've never actually seen the whole movie. Like I never really sat down. It wasn't really something that interested me. It was probably another one that jumped around like this.
Yeah, I don't know if that's one of his books though. I was just referring to his books, the writer
maybe
who wrote
loosely like that style of film, maybe then.
Okay.
Like with that sort of addiction and that sort of, what's that word I'm looking for? But they need that
dependent
to get off. And, well, they need that to survive. Yeah, they need that to get off. They don't feel normal unless they're doing it. You know what I
mean? So for my best scenes, I wrote down the intro, the introduction of Edward Norton's character, the introduction to Tyler Durden. When Tyler goes to meet Marla, I love that scene. When she takes the Xanax, tries to overdose, and Edward Norton walks away, but then Tyler Durden picks up the phone, goes over there, robs her, brings her back, fucks the shit out of her. But the whole scene of her calling the cops was also about her suicide because it was like a cry for help move. And when the cops show up, Tyler is just in the corner, dancing with her or something in the building. I don't know. It just makes me laugh every time I see it. It's just like he's got the sunglasses. They're chilling in a stairwell or something kind of. And the cops are like, "Where does this woman live?" It's like, "Oh, she's at the end of the hall. She's terrible." Blah blah blah. Another thing, I know everybody talks about obviously the two leads of this, Edward Norton and fucking Brad Pitt, but Helena Bonham Carter. Fantastic this is probably the best thing I think I've ever seen her do. Great role, Marla. Great. Well done.
Yeah, where did I see her else? I've seen her in other movies, little pieces here and there.
She's with Tim Burton. She's I think married to him now, or she's
okay. I think that's probably where I seen him. Probably at this award ceremony or some shit.
Sadly, almost every other film I've seen her in, she does other things here and there, but almost everything, she's one of those people that you see all the time now in Tim Burton films. And she's good. She's great. But for me, it just became one of those things that every fucking movie of his, if I've seen it, she ends up popping up in it because of her association with him now. And it kind of, I don't like that. I feel that she's missing out on doing other interesting work that she should be doing instead of working with Tim Burton. You know what I mean? So I think which is fine. There's some good parts that she's done, but I think this is probably one of the best things she's done. And I think that maybe I haven't seen enough of her other work, but I think this is great.
She kind of reminds me of Marissa Tomei sort of. She's got that look and that attitude in certain movies. Remember from maybe not My Cousin Vinny, but older films like that. That Marissa Tomei was in. She's in some newer movies now too, right? But nothing really crazy,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I think that's actually one of my probably one of two of my like other the questions that we have. That's probably the answer to one of the two that I'm gonna decide on. I had them just kind of debating on those two.
So anyways, here's the scene that I just mentioned is one of the best scenes of the movie here.
Yeah, that's actually, you know what? That first bar scene is the one I had mentioned that one too, because I think that one there is probably makes what makes the movie. I think. I mean, it's what
when they start fighting each other.
No. Well, in the first bar meeting, when he's introducing himself, when they're talking, and then they go outside. Yeah, and they first start this whole punch me thing, and and go back and forth.
You find later on was him just basically beating the shit out of himself in the alley, right? When they show it from the different perspective after the reveal is made.
How the fuck do you see on a camera somebody getting dragged? I don't understand that. How do you make yourself look like you're getting dragged? This is what I'm not understanding. It's really mind fucking.
You got to suspend disbelief a little bit in this film, which we'll get into in a moment. Anyways, here's the scene.
No, that one there, he played that one. Now, you know what? I could always go with a girl that falls off the bed like that, just clumsy. No problem, bro. A nice head case like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the other one I got here is the soap making scene where he gives him the chemical burn. That's a pretty fucking awesome scene.
That's a pretty deep scene, yeah. I mean, because to be honest, I mean, you have to be. How does he do it? I mean, if you want to play the clip, I mean, how does he do it if he's talking in the third person sort of thing, right? I'm not understanding. See, this is where it gets confusing a lot of the times. I know you got to think outside of the box, kind of, with this movie. You got to kind of think outside of the box, and
he put his own hand out and he fucking poured the shit on. Like, that's not too hard to think if you're talking to yourself.
Yeah, I know, but you're mentally seeing. You're physically seeing two people on the screen,
right?
But you're not seeing but you never seen what arms they're coming from. You know what I mean? Like the whole narration of it is really messes with the actual. Well, it messes with the story as well, right? Because if you think about it, it's confusing you. So you're thinking three people, right?
Right. Okay, here I'll show the clip here. So that's a pretty good.
This is what I'm trying to tell you is how is he holding his own hand? It's very confusing. I get what he's saying.
He's not.
Essentially, he's telling a story.
That's the whole thing. He thinks something is holding him there. But it's not. The only thing that you could maybe make an argument for is he's not really slapping himself in the face like that. He may be sitting there going like this, but he can't fucking literally put his arm in front of himself and
that's what I'm saying. He's kind of you see his actual physical hand holding somebody else's physical hand holding it, which fucking messes with your perception.
It's just in his head, right? That's a disease that that's hard to understand anyways to begin with. So anytime something like that can be argued during this film, I'm just he just thinks that's real, right? It may be happening, it may not be happening, because there's a lot of things that happen that don't actually occur, which we see after the fact. They give you a couple of different scenes in the reveal. Once the reveal is made, there's a couple of small things, like when he went to hand him the beer in the parking lot after beating the shit out of himself, the beer just falls to the ground and breaks. Now, we didn't see that happen in that scene, and someone he thought was sitting there drinking it, right? So, but we didn't see a beer bottle hit the ground, even though that's what happened. So it's really, you're seeing it through his mind, through his eyes, a lot of these scenes.
And essentially, it's like reading a book, dude.
Yeah.
It's like you being the guy reading the book.
But that's
on the story.
I think that's why it's so clever that they didn't tell you the name of the fucking character. They have him narrate everything during the film, but the main focus is always on his split personality. He is the driving force. Don't get me wrong, Edward Norton definitely has more screen time in this film, but he is the everything that happens is a result of Tyler, not really him. He's just fucking coasting through it, right? Everything, all the plans that he had in his head are all Tyler. Like all of them that basically come to fruition as they play out through the film was Tyler working in the background, not Edward Norton, right? I mean, well, technically it is Edward Norton, but it's not. It's his other personality, right? So
yeah. And he doesn't, ultimately you don't believe that it's kind of crazy. That personality, there's something that it's called when it's a split personality, but there's some sort of dissociative order with like some sort of type of mental, I guess you would call it some sort of mental disability, because I mean you have some sort of personality disassociation with yourself. You know what I mean? Like you're not. Yeah, that's the word. I'm like, sorry, dude. Sometimes
you sounded a little crazy over there. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm thinking of it before it comes out of my head, right?
I know what you mean.
Yeah, but
anyways, here's my favorite scene of the film, though, and this is the end of my scenes that I wrote down. Anyways, I wanted to show this last one, and then if you wanted to get into if there's any others that you wanted me to bring up on the screen or that you wanted to mention here for scenes, but this is the one I'm awarding for me my favorite scene of the film, which I was kind of surprised at. I just always enjoy watching this, and particularly I think Edward Norton's acting in this scene sold it. Like he actually did a really good job in this scene. I was quite impressed. The only other time I've seen this done, and it was way more comical than this, was in Liar Liar when Jim Carrey beat the shit out of himself. So here's the scene where Edward Norton is forced to beat the shit out of himself so his job would basically keep paying him for not being at work because he's become such a disturbance at his job. So there we go. Oh man, so what do you got, man? I think that's my favorite scene. I think upon rewatching it, I found that the most entertaining. I always love that part when he beats the shit out of himself. Yeah, I can't really explain it that. Like I said, everything else I mentioned, the setup of the characters, the chemical burn, like a lot of those scenes are great fucking scenes. I just think I enjoy that one the most. Like at that point,
I love that scene too. I thought it was probably one of the greatest scenes like that somebody's done, like you said, since probably Jim Carrey. I never even thought of that one. I knew there was another movie that it happened in, but I could not think of what movie it was. But yeah, no, I mean to actually sit there and do that, to sit there. I mean, there's a ton of little fighting scenes like that through the camera you see through the whole movie, right? So it was kind of, I mean, ultimately that was the ultimate one out of all the scenes. But I mean, I still think, to be honest, where Brad Pitt and Tyler and Edward Norton there meet each other first in the bar when they're sitting there and they're actually having a drink together when he calls them after he sets his after the condo was caught on fire. He decided to first he decided to call Marla, but then he ended up calling Tyler, right? And they ended up meeting at the bar, and they go over. And the problem is there's a lot of quotes too in this scene, right? That's another big thing about this movie is that there was a lot of quotes, man. Even too many to even remember. To be honest with you, like you do have to write some of them down. But I mean, honestly, the amount of quotes from just that scene alone,
yeah,
you can go nuts over, right?
But yeah, this is the infamous I want you to hit me scene. Like that's one of the quotes right there. I want you to hit me as hard as you can. He's like, what are you talking about? All right, yeah. Okay.
But I mean, he also has other ones. Like if you were to say if you were to die right now, what would you do and stuff? Or when he started saying,
we're gonna get into quotes. We're gonna get into that's the next category. Okay. So, yeah. Hold your horse.
No, but the best scenes. But if you can pull up that initial bar scene where they meet each other and they're talking back and forth, and they're kind of discussing, and you got to kind of pay attention and follow, where and how the discussion is going back and forth, because I think here is where you can find out a lot of real little things for the end. Yeah,
I'm glad you wrote that one down, because that is an awesome fucking scene. And which we barely even talked about so far, even though like this movie is called Fight Club. After all that, after the insomnia aspect, the fucking support group aspect, then they fucking start this Fight Club thing for the movie. And really, this is what the main plot of the movie all works towards the ending, because Fight Club essentially is just a way to brainwash people into helping him for Project Mayhem, which is
which is another disguise for the rest of the movie.
Group that essentially, well, this is an anarchist wet dream, this film, right? Like this is a very fuck authority kind of, like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's funny because it's actually relevant very much so even today, in a sense, right? With a lot of things that are happening, and but from a different angle. I think it's different because this is more about like material wealth and like not being like a, like, you know what I mean? Like a fat cat fucking, you know, like this is like people that would you know, on Wall Street or whatever, like people that hate like fucking people that are rich, like the 1% type shit. That's kind of what this is more so than. This isn't like a race thing or anything like that, obviously, but it's definitely, like I said, it's like an anarchist fucking like wet dream, this fucking film, because like yeah. What's that?
Maybe fascist too, a little bit.
Right.
Am I the right word am I looking for?
Well, yeah, no, they hate on them. I wouldn't call these guys that.
No, that's what I mean.
Right.
But that's what this whole movie around that time too that it came out. It came out at a weird time with all that stuff too, with the big shootings going on, and there's a lot of violence in this movie for something that was coming out around that time, right?
Yeah.
So,
anything else? Any other scenes that you wanted to point out, mention that you had on your list? I'm sure I covered a couple of them, but anything else?
I mean, the sex scene with Tyler and Marla there. That whole up and down circle thing. That one there, I think, had to be another good scene. Like throughout the movie, I could probably pick 10 good scenes. I mean, but we can't sit there. I wanted to pick something of the best, so I thought I brought it down to that first scene there at the bar. Yeah. Like I like that whole. You were saying how the movie has big sections. That part of that whole part there in the bar leading up to that part was great. Yeah. That was that whole scene, that whole take, I guess, that I liked.
Well, that's why I didn't even specifically write down the scene that you fucking pinpointed, which that they essentially started the Fight Club from, which is a fantastic scene. But I just literally looped that into the whole introduction of Tyler Durden, right? Like when I wrote intro this character, into that character. Like I said, it's like a huge chunk of the fucking film. That's great.
That's a huge dialogue.
Yeah. So like, yeah. So in that sense, that's what I found a little bit more difficult about doing the categories for this film. But that's why I kind of would rather have a little bit more open discussion than usual. And this is kind of why we're already 45 minutes into this and we were still on our first category, right?
It's a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry, dude. I'm just in the car in the drive with my friend. This is what I do, guys.
Yeah.
No, go on. I'm listening.
But yeah, so I can so yeah, we'll get into quotes next, and you can lead off on this one once you park the car there.
But I'm good. I'm good. We're parked.
But going into the discussion today, if you wanted to quickly mention, and I'm sure it'll come out through our conversation throughout the show, but you had messaged me last night and had mentioned about how this time around the movie kind of blew your mind, like more so than even the first time watching it, which is kind of surprising to me. Can you explain a little bit further at this point without going into too much? Like,
because I actually have to focus.
Right.
And that movie is very fucking hard to focus. There's a lot going on and a lot of dialogue, right, to take in at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, some of the words at the top of my head I can't remember until I think about them for a second. Like, in those dialogue stretches, like it could be something simple, you know, if they just brought it down, if they dumbed it down a little bit, but they were using, I mean, when he was narrating, he was using very what's the word I'm looking for? He's very using being very descriptive and stuff like that with with what he was saying, right? So that part kind of threw me off, right? But that was a big thing. But I'm still confused. After watching it, even taking the time to actually sit here and write stuff out about it, I was getting confused still about. I mean, I understood and I thought that's how I believe the movie to be, but I still don't know if that's how the movie is believed to be.
Did you want to mention what you were confused so much about? Maybe do you want to talk about that at the end, or like, because I want
to keep that for another category. I mean, it's just there's so many things with this movie. I mean, it blends in to the kind of what you were asking me there too about how I found it, different, even harder. I mean, I still found it harder this time than I did last time watching this movie. Sure. I mean, I think last time I just watched it more for the action, more for the, not so much for the actual storyline behind it. More to just see the actors going, because I at that time those are great actors, right? And they still are. Not to mean just at that time, but there still are great actors, right?
Sure. Okay, so if you want to get into the quotes, best quotes of the film, our next category, if you want to start us out there, Jay, any quotes you wanted to highlight?
Like when there was one that Brad Pitt said in what part was it? I don't know if it's the airplane there, when he says the things that own you that you won't end up owning you.
Yep, I have that written down.
Right. That was actually, I think, after the
things you own end up owning you. Yeah,
things you own end up owning you.
I have it written down.
And then there was another one too that he said something, and I couldn't, and it was so quick. I kept trying to pause the fucking thing to catch the quote, right? Because but it's something like self-improvement is
masturbation or whatever the hell he says.
Yeah. Right. So and is room for self-improvement, right?
I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
Well, self-improvement is masturbation. It's a big scene. That whole dialect in that scene, the dialogue, sorry, in that scene is crazy.
I was gonna say earlier, I said it isn't a film that I think I remember for so many quotes. I still don't think it's the most quotable film, but if anything, it's all the Brad Pitt isms that are the things that you walk away with from this film. Like everything that Brad Pitt has the best interesting little dialogue, like pieces of dialogue, like the lines, like the one you just said. There's so many throwaway observations that Brad Pitt makes as the Tyler Durden character that I guess Edward Norton's split personality is actually figuring out for himself and observing, right? Those are all the lines I think that are the best probably throughout the film. Like you just threw out a couple but like you said, they're throwing them out like nothing. Like there's so many of them that like observations that even in their little chit chats that as he's talking to himself, oh yeah, like what kind of person would you want to fight? Oh, I'd fight Gandhi or whatever. He's like, oh, good answer. Like just things like that. That's the interesting conversations that he's having with himself, even about the fights or about his perspective on things. That's I think the best lines of the film are those kind of things. But again, like not like huge memorable quotes. A lot of those.
No, they're just like quick, and then they throw them in there, and they just go to throw you off. Like Marla says that when she had got laid in that scene too, she said if you notice, she goes by quick, and she just says, "I haven't been fucked like that since grade school."
Yeah.
And I think it's Brad Pitt there. Tyler looks at her, and it's kind of like, what the fuck did you just say? Like
this chick, yeah.
Yeah. Well, even too, like there's so many, I mean, there was way too many to write down. I mean, we can go on IMDb and look all day if we really wanted to on quotes, right? But they'll throw you like a whole page full of quotes. But I mean, she said Tyler Durden. What's that?
I was gonna say, why don't you just get right to it then? If you're whenever you're done, and just say your favorite quote, because it's the most memorable quote of the film, and I think that it has to be. I think your favorite. It has to be the best quote that you have written down. If it's not, I'd be surprised. But I think it's the one that everyone fucking knows from this film, is unanimous with. Like, you know what I mean? Like I think there's no running from it.
I'm lost on which one that is, dude. because there were so many that maybe that's why.
First rule of fucking Fight Club speech. That's the quote. First rule of Fight Club. You do not talk about Fight Club. That's got to be the best quote. I wrote down that down as the best quote of the film.
Yeah. It has to be. Well, I didn't look at it as a quote, right? I looked at it as the rules to Fight Club, man. So I didn't look at it. I looked at it separately, dude. I didn't look at it because if really you can go and you can name everything on that list, right? Yeah. But I get what you're saying when he sits there and he's giving that speech, right? To everybody in the room.
Everyone, like, it's just that even at the end when he's like, and if this is your first night, you have to fight. Like, oh, that whole fucking thing. But it's the whole thing about the first rule of Fight Club is that you do not talk about. The second rule of Fight Club is that you do not talk about Fight Club. Like, that's got to be the quote of the film. And I wrote that down as cliche and like easy as that is to be. Like, of course, that's the fucking quote. It is like it's my favorite.
I said when we were gonna do this film thing that we can't talk about it though. We'll do it, but we can't talk about it. So maybe you see you brought it up. No, but you're not supposed to talk about it.
But what else did you have? Any others there?
Another one with Tyler too. He said because Edward Norton says that he feels broken, like he felt like he was broken, and he says even the Mona Lisa's falling apart. Like he said he was falling apart. He goes, yeah, there's something like he was broken because of taking all those fights and stuff like that. You know, just taking the beating. And there's one little line in there that he said even the Mona Lisa is falling apart, which I thought was kind of quirky, but I also thought it was a good time in the movie for it. Like a good, and it just how with the Brad Pitt quotes, they just threw them in there and they just seemed to just mesh perfectly with and the way he delivers them. Like, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, you got to be a great actor if you can't deliver a quote like that and make people wonder, right? That was your only quote. That was your only actual quote that you thought was good, or?
No, I got more. I was just waiting for you to be done before I went ahead. That was my favorite quote. Like, did you have your best quote written down? Like, was one of those your best, or is it the Fight Club one?
No, yeah, that one. No, I think things you won't end up owning you. I think that was my favorite, man, in that speech there, because it was actually a good whole speech and everything that led up to it, right? So.
No, that's a good one. Because that's a theme of the film, right? Like that line right there basically explains like his thinking moving forward, right? So like, yeah, no, that's a really good one for sure. I had that written down as well. I mean, another contender for me, even though I wrote the best quote was the Fight Club one, the rules of Fight Club, is the opening line of to the support group is Bob had bitch tits. But Meatloaf. Fucking Meatloaf. Yeah, no, that's
that kind of goes into our next category, but that's where I kind of placed him in our next category there. If you want to go on in the order that we had it in. So I mean, but yeah, no, I like that quote. That was a good quote. That was a great quote.
Another one of the few Edward Norton ones I actually wrote down here because I didn't feel he had many memorable to me was this one though. This one, when I heard it again, I remembered it even from like previous watches of this film is when he's explaining about the crashing of the plane. He's like, life insurance pays triple if you die on a business trip. But he's thinking about everything that could go wrong on the plane. I was just like, yeah, that's a grim way of fucking looking at it. You know, I was like, yeah, that's. But he's like, it's true. You know?
It does, right? Because he tried, you know, like I still couldn't believe that. See, on the plane when he was talking to Brad Pitt at the time.
Yeah.
Was he first talking to that other chick at the see, I mean, I could be my alter ego could be over here on this side here. I could be talking about the person that's sitting here, but there's nobody here, right?
Right.
Could you imagine all of a sudden I just went, it's boom, and I took a shot? Wouldn't that throw you off?
Right.
That whole movie, and that whole. I'm losing control over here, bro. There's everything going on over here. Now all of a sudden everything just went nuts. But yeah, go on.
I like when they introduced Tyler Durden's character, and he's explaining how he splices the like the dicks and shit into the film, and he's like, and they talk about the specs on the screen, where he's like, in the industry we call those cigarette burns, and they kind of break the fourth wall a little bit because he speaks directly to the camera, right? And he goes like this, where like he like touches the air, kind of like, because he's like that dot, that little pieces
in the corner.
And then you see the thing flash on the screen. He's like, "Nice big cock." That's
the kids crying. The parents are looking around like, "Did that really happen just now? Did I see that?"
Yeah, and he's like, people have seen it, but they don't even realize that they've seen it. They're just like, I'm just like, that's great. Like, yeah, that was, again, like, these are, I for something, like I said,
I didn't know
that. Yeah.
About that might have been what the problem was, like, why that little, because I remember watching older stuff like that, real stuff. Remember when you were in well, I was in elementary school, probably, when they would play little things like that on the screen there, like the projector. My school was old, right? So they couldn't afford any good things. But yeah, they would have stuff there on the reels, and you would see that cup pop up in the corner. I was always wondering what that was until Fight Club explained it. To be honest with you, I had no idea what it was,
bro. And then there's when he meets Marla, and Edward Norton kind of in his narration comments about how he's fucking her all the time, and he's like, how could Tyler not go for that? The night before, he was splicing sex organs into Cinderella. So like things like that, yeah. And another Tyler Durdenism here is it's not till you lost everything till you can gain everything, right? Or anything, right? That whole thing. Again, it's kind of like the same kind of philosophies about, after he lost all this shit in the fire and everything blew up in his condo, right? And then you got his name is Robert Paulson. Like, that's a classic line too, right? His name is like, but when they talk about Meatloaf getting killed at the end there, and he freaks out because that's the only guy who actually was a friend of his prior to all this, right? Going into it. A truly innocent person that got sucked into this fucking cult like Fight Club Project Mayhem thing, right? So when he dies, and then the buddy goes on to say, I get it. He's trying to, like, tell them that it was wrong, and he's like, no, in Project Mayhem, when you die, he does have a name in death, right? It's like his name was Robert Paulson, and they all start like chanting it like a fucking like all the. They're all sheep, right? They're all like, they're all just.
Yeah, they're fucking watching the fucking Joker movie.
Yeah. So.
They're all repeating the fucking names, but yeah, no, they had a lot of good quote style scenes in that whole movie, man. I mean, we can go over this all night for another half an hour. About.
Oh, I'm done. That's everything I had. I had that, and like I said, and there's also the whole. It's not really like a quote, but just like, well, there's a few quotes that go along with it when they start doing that whole "I am Jack's colon," like when he finds all those books. And now that like, you know what I mean, and like the guy's referring to his different body parts and shit like that. So that's like a theme I think that goes on throughout the movie as well, because he's like, I am Jack's whatever. Like even in that scene where he beats the shit out of himself, he's like, I am Jack's whatever he says, revenge or whatever the fuck he says, right, in that scene. So like that's another thing that continues throughout the film, is that he keeps referencing that whole Jack thing. Maybe he's Jack, right? Maybe
that's
he was.
But that's one of he going into the questions that I want to answer, but
we'll get into it. Yeah. I think I did spoil that question right there. So that's another category. Anyways, if you want to move ahead with the next category, I think that's it for me for quotes. But like I said, it's weird. Definitely a lot of nice lines in the film, but not really memorable quotes. I think I've heard everyone refer to. Like the only ones I think anybody's ever referred to, at least in my conversations with people about Fight Club, is the rule about Fight Club one. Everyone fucking knows that. And then like, I think that Robert Paulson one's kind of popular with people. And then like, there's
one stuff in the beginning where he says, your life is ending 1 minute at a time, right? Like that was an Edward Norton line, and that one there, it's true, because if you think about it, it's just
but do you ever hear anybody refer to this movie with that quote? Like people throw out quotes all day for certain things. That's what I mean. Like smart lines. Yes. Very smart written lines. And I'm sure that's dialogue that was taken right out of the book. Like the speech, the Fight Club speech, that's right out of the book. Right.
Yeah,
So
that's gotta be right.
yeah, no, I read that it was. I didn't read the book, but just like in my research a little bit about this film after I watched it, I learned that. So like, it's interesting. I don't find it to be a quotable film, but it's a very the dialogue, like the lines, a lot of smart observations that are made by Brad Pitt's character. Yeah, it's just some good stuff there. So it's strange. Still, I find it a strange film to dissect like this, right? In that sense. So just give me 1 second. I'm just gonna grab another drink and then we'll get into the next category here. Just one moment.
You do that. You do that, and I'll entertain everybody here. But yeah, what if Tyler Durden's sitting right here next to me? You never know, right? Sometimes I feel like there's a Tyler Durden in my head, and then I wake up and realize that I'm just fucking crazy. So yeah, no, it was a crazy movie, guys. I mean, I could sit here all day and talk about it, but that sex scene too, and I wanted to tell Nico, I don't know if you realized, but they said that was one of the first times they used it for something other than how they used that same technology in the Matrix, which was pretty good when they have that revolving camera and everything's moving it's all fucked up, man, the way they did that whole that whole visual scene. So I thought that was pretty cool too as well. But I mean,
The sex scene? You're talking about the sex
scene? But the part of how they filmed it.
Yeah.
Right, they filmed it using that technology from the Matrix too, right? That same thing where they slow everything down, like when they get the bullets and you see them coming slow in the Matrix. That fucking I forget what it's called. I guess it's a type of CGI of some sort, right? But I'm not quite sure what they would call that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Okay, so what do you have as your next category written down there? What do you have there?
Well, I had that guy category, and
same. Okay, so go ahead. Do you want to go first?
Well, yeah, sure. I guess. I mean, the one that I had was the Meatloaf one because it threw me off in the beginning because I knew him, but I remember him with fucking long hair and fucking in the actual group and his actual band there, right? So when I seen him there, especially with his man tits there, that threw me off. I had to double check just to make sure that was him because I knew him, but for some reason I thought it was just from the size of him. Maybe I thought he was an ex fighter or something like that of some sort, or an ex weightlifter or some, like they were referring to him in the movie. But I wasn't sure, so when I looked it up, I kind of went wow, and I know but he's actually a good character, even though he's just in there here and there, right? And it's little parts on the film that reference him. Big scenes, but little references towards him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the one we're talking about is the That Guy Award, everybody, which we basically give to people that you see in a film, you're like, what the fuck is this guy doing in this film? Or you recognize a guy, you don't really know his name, but you've seen him in a lot of other things. That's basically the people that we give the That Guy Award to. And in this case, I guess it was just you're giving him the award just because it's fucking Meatloaf in the film, right? Which is just weird, right? Him popping up in this movie.
And
right?
him with the whole purpose of him in that film, you know what I mean? Like him and his man breasts and his soul to just a part of the group that he was in, and his emotions and that whole feeling thing, and how I think Norton fit in that group pretty well too, is for this whole purpose of the movie. I think that was actually maybe not the testicular cancer part, but I think as a whole that part of the movie kind of reminds me more of like Norton's character. He's got that side to him, but he just doesn't know how to let it out. And these guys do, because now their estrogen levels through the roof, right? But yeah, no, I couldn't think of anybody else. Like I've seen other people, but I I couldn't remember if there was anybody that I seen in different movies. To be honest with you, at the top of my head, because that movie's about what 10 years old now.
Yeah, this is 90.
People don't look all the same. Yeah.
No, this is 99.
99.
It's fucking
Yeah.
20 years old, man. It's a 20-year-old
Yeah,
film
man.
now, right? It's 21
I
years
mean,
old.
people don't look all the same. Not like Brad Pitt. Everybody doesn't look like Edward Norton, Brad Pitt
Well,
still.
I'll tell you something. I don't know if you did notice. Maybe you didn't, maybe you did. But I had Meatloaf as my second choice. I wrote him down. So I am totally there with you for your Meatloaf choice. But my choice for the That Guy Award in this film was a little known musician, another musician at this point in time, who started his acting career and only had a few lines in this movie, very young at this point, barely looks himself because his hair's bleached blonde in this one, and he gets his face fucked up in the film, is Jared Leto. As
Was it him?
that was
your
him.
buddy?
Fuck, I should look up his name here. Hold on, I have IMDb up right here.
Hold on, I just didn't know he was in it.
Yeah, so Meatloaf, yeah, of course, was Robert Paulson. And Jared Leto was the guy that fought Edward Norton in that one scene, and he fucking slams his face across the ground in the Fight Club. And afterwards, he comes back and his face is all like really fucked up and like disfigured, and like his teeth are all fucking missing. Like he that's the one where that was the most brutal beatdown he gave during the film, and he was like one of the leads in Project Mayhem. And then afterwards, he walked out, Angel Face, thank you. And he walks out and he's like, take that fucking guy to a hospital. Like he fucked him up good, and that was a young Jared Leto. That's I'm gonna look up his thing here, and that's got to be one of his first earliest films that he was in. He was barely in the film. He didn't show up till probably about halfway through, right? So
yeah. No, they. I thought that was him, and they had mentioned him in certain things I was reading, but I didn't know that was the guy. You know, I mean, it didn't really look like him after taking that beating.
And I know now you could be like, that's not really a That Guy award to give to fucking Jared Leto, because Jared Leto's been in a lot of big films at this point. But at the point of this film, he was barely anybody in terms of acting, right? So I think
brand new then, right?
Right. So so I think at this point, and again, he's not really a big part of it. I figured that the award should go to him for this one. I'm just looking up his acting history right now, actually, just to see. Yeah, so he was in some other shit. Don't get me wrong. He was in TV series. He was on TV a lot, and some straight to like home video or like straight to TV type movies and TV shows prior to this. But in terms of film, yeah, this was his big first film that he appeared in. Prior to this, he's in a few other films, but nothing I think of like, and no big films like Fight Club that I could see here. Because after Fight Club, look at this. After Fight Club, he's in Girl Interrupted, American Psycho, Requiem for a Dream. Okay, like he's in big films after this, like Lord of War. Yeah, I mean, right up all the way to like Dallas Buyers Club and shit, right? So like he this was like the start of, it looks like, of a nice run for Jared Leto after this point in time. But yeah, so that's Angel Face, Jared Leto. That's what I gave That Guy award to. Meatloaf was my second choice, so good one. I agree with that.
Yeah, I didn't actually know it was that. I mean, like I said, I read some stuff about it afterwards, but I couldn't picture which character it was, because I mean, everybody's getting their ass fucking kicked in this movie, right?
Yeah. Well, like I said, you can't really tell it's him, right? He looks very different in this film, right? So
he doesn't look like the crazy fucking Joker.
And I didn't even know it was him till like multiple watches later, like until like Jared Leto was a big star. Like the first time I watched this film, I didn't know who that fucking was, right? I mean, he may have been in the credits. I didn't know who Jared Leto was, right? So, but like at that
point in his career.
No, yeah, exactly. I knew who Meatloaf was, but I actually had to be told like that was Meatloaf, because I wasn't really familiar with his music. Like I knew who he was, like I knew he's a musician and stuff, but like the fact that he was in this movie as this character, again, like you said, very strange, right? But he did a good job, man. Good job. I think he did a great job in this film.
It's funny too, because Yeah, he had to play a crazy part. Even if you look at his picture nowadays, it doesn't look like. I think growing up, I used to hear my old man play a lot of his music sometimes. Off of their albums. Like my
Isn't
dad
he,
was the type of guy like me that listens to a bunch of different music, right?
isn't he the guy who does the song "I Would Do Anything for Love"? Isn't
Yeah,
that me?
that was more later on. That was, but yeah, no, I know it. That's that whole fucking. The album cover is pretty crazy, but the music is fucking like not. I'm not 100% for Meatloaf. That's
Yeah,
more of
it's the Bat Out of
that's
Hell one
more
I'm talking about, right? Bat Out of Hell, that album.
that's more of a Rob style music probably.
Okay, so moving right along here. Best performance, big category, best performance. Okay, so I'll start this one off. This is going to be the first time I've ever probably said this, okay? But I was trying to separate myself from my feelings for this person as an actor going into the movie this time, like watching it and being critical and actually talking about it this time around, like actually reviewing it, because I've never done that with this film before.
Mm-hmm.
I put my personal issues aside with this person, and I put down best performance, Edward Norton. I would have always told you up to this point it was Brad Pitt, because Brad Pitt is the coolest fucking guy in this movie, okay? And this is probably at the height of fucking Brad Pitt. No, honestly.
Yeah, no, I know.
But that's the thing. Edward Norton, and I don't even like Edward. I don't like Edward Norton as an actor, really. Like, I don't know if I ever told you that. I don't really like him as an actor that much. I don't like a lot of his films. There's honestly only like 2 films that I can tell you that I always remember that I like with Edward Norton. This one and American History X. I don't think I've ever really enjoyed him in another film like I have in those 2 films.
Yeah, most people only know him for those 2, really. I mean,
right.
That's a big thing, right?
Right. And he's in that movie Rounders. He's okay in that, but anyways, he yeah, I'm not a big fan of him, but he has the much more difficult role in this film. Like, Brad Pitt has the very flashy, very cool role, the very easy, like, this is just, I'm exhuming like Brad Pitt on the screen. Like, Brad Pitt's just Brad Pitt. He's really cool in this role. Like, and he does a great job. He has the flashier role. He has the better role. To me.
Well, he's a young Brad Pitt, so I mean.
Right. He's at the height of his fucking career here. But Edward Norton, yeah, he's okay in Italian Job. Actually, I forgot about Italian Job. But I'm not a huge fan. And yeah, of course, right on. Hit the nail on the head here. Huge fan of Meatloaf. I'm a fan of Meatloaf too. The food, though. But I'm so funny, right? Har. But yeah,
you're not even kicker.
Edward Norton kicks ass in this fucking movie, man. He has the way more difficult role in this film out of the 2 people. So, like, for a moment, I was even going to go with Helena Bonham Carter before we talked about this film today, because, like, she's awesome, but she, again, has a really fucking awesome character. Like, Edward Norton had to, like, act crazy, act like manic, act like, at times I thought he was underacting, not overacting, underacting, because I'm like he seems so quiet and boring, and I'm like, no, he's suffering from insomnia, and he's like that. Like, his character Tyler Durden is the one that's outlandish and crazy and all this, like, you know what I mean, like, until he becomes like that too. So it made perfect sense. So my criticisms towards him, even at that point in time, I was like, no, I'm wrong. He's just he's downplaying the character because that's the character. Like, I think he had the way more difficult role. That's all I'm going to say. Like, he had the more impressive role. He had more screen time. I got to give it to Edward Norton, even though I'm not a fan.
You know what, dude? He was on, actually, to be honest with you, I thought the same way. I thought, like I said to you, I thought he played, Brad Pitt just played a young Brad Pitt, like you're saying, in the height of his career. And, just trying to show himself off and do what he does best, right? But you're used to that when you're watching Brad Pitt, especially early in his career. Now, Edward Norton had a very sophisticated style role. He had to basically play he was the narrator, but he also had his role, and he had to act out everything as the outsider ultimately, in one way, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning looking at himself from the outside,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was weird, right? So, hey, like my little thing? I'm trying to grab it, but I don't want to look like an idiot.
Oh, go ahead.
See?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
fucking light. Yeah. But yeah, no, and I mean, like for those performances that he does when he beat himself up, and
Yep.
those single performances that he does, he wins it for me in those. Like, I mean, like we were saying about Brad Pitt, it's more quotable, quick lines, and it's just Brad Pitt talking, like giving his dialogue, right? I mean, Edward Norton is ultimately doing the more of the acting, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
More of the you have to believe him to believe the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, and at that time, and he wasn't at the peak of his career by far. So I'm with you. I give that award to him. I mean, I wasn't gonna pick. There really wasn't anybody else I was gonna pick. I didn't think of the Marlon character. I thought she had short parts in the movie, and not big enough parts to be considered
Right.
Best performance for me
Right.
in my eyes. But I mean, some people can argue that because I mean, she did play a good role. She played a different character than like what you say she's been playing a lot lately. So, or stuff that you can relate her in, like you said, Tim Burton stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I like to go with him. I like to go with Edward Norton all the way, the narrator.
Good. I'm glad you said that because I thought you were gonna come here. I'm glad I said it, to be honest with you, because like again, yeah. Brad Pitt is just he shows up and he's so fucking cool in this film, and it's so easy to pick him as the best like performance in this film because don't get me wrong, he did a great job. And if there was that was my second choice if I wasn't gonna pick Edward Norton, but I've always dismissed Edward Norton to some degree just because I'm not a fan of his other work. But watching the film this time, he absolutely had the more difficult part, and he really had to act, and he had to act so many different ways. I'm hearing some feedback on your end of me, so
I know.
Yeah, but yeah,
so it happened when I turned the lights on. So go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, so there you go. Best performance. Me and Jay gave Edward Norton best performance on this one.
Sure.
Moving on. Do you have anybody for overacting award? The actor that overacted in this film.
You know what? Overacting? I don't know. I can't say. I mean, maybe I could say Brad Pitt overacted a bit. You know, but just doing his thing. But that's when you sit there and think about it, it's just him doing his thing. You know what I mean? So it's kind of hard to judge that because when you think of him in other films, it's like, okay, that's just Brad Pitt. That's what he does. That's the way he kind of overacts, but it's just the right amount. You know what I mean? Where it doesn't start to drive you crazy.
I mean, in a sense, at some points of the film, you could even make an argument for Edward Norton, I guess. But I'm not going to because there's some parts where he's a little bit over the top, but he's meant to be. And a lot of the time in the film, he's underacting. Like I said, I made a joke about it, but I just felt like he was downplaying the character. But it was like we were following a character who was suffering from insomnia and somebody who wasn't that exciting in his life. So it made sense that he wasn't really that bombastic on the screen like fucking Brad Pitt was, right? So I didn't have anybody. I didn't write anybody down for overacting award on this one. Did you have one? No, you said no, right?
No, I just said like I could pick Brad if I wanted to pick out if anybody could pick Brad Pitt because other people didn't have big enough roles to be overacting. I think in either. Yeah. Like I said, there was 3 real main characters, maybe 4 if you're really pushing it. But I mean, to be honest with you, for overacting, even as a little piece, it was hard to pick out like different characters, even guys in the group. I mean, if you want to consider, you know, I could consider it all because I consider the fight scenes a little overacting it, you know, at some points, right? At you know, in some situations, right? But
you know what? You know who we should give it to? Lou of Lou's Bar. That one scene where he fucking bleeds all over. He's like, "Hey, this is my bar." When he shows up, let's give it to that fucking guy.
He shows up in the basement, right?
That guy. Let's give it to that guy.
Bar.
Because that guy, he actually tough guy, and then he fucking gets like in a second. You're like, yeah, this guy's not a tough guy. Yeah, I gotta give it to that guy. There we go. Give it to that actor. I don't even know his name. Lou of Lou Smart. I'm Lou. Remember when he shows up? He's like, I'm Lou of Lou Smart. He's like, oh, come on, Lou. We really like this place. He kicks the shit out of him. Yeah.
That threw me off because I thought it was the other guy's bar, but I mean, I guess he was just running it, right? Or he was just
okay.
Bartender, you know what I mean? It wasn't the same guy that was the bartender.
The guy with the weird fucking hair, like the crazy ass fucking hair. Yeah, I know. Remember, he shows up. He's like, oh, he's in the fucking hospital. He broke his arm or whatever, and he shows up later. And he's got a cast. He's got like a sling. Yeah, it's because he's fighting, right? And as the movie goes on, you kind of see that, right? As he starts visiting all the cities and all the fucked up, all the people that are all.
I'm trying to see who he is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see who that actual character is.
He has a name. He's in the video game. Oh, there was a fight. By the way, guys.
I think he's the guy. He was where is he? I see his picture here, but it's not. You can barely see his fucking picture. It's not that guy. It looks like the guy from. Oh no, he was on an episode of Cheers. That's why it has a picture of him. The best picture of him that they have is him beside Cliff from Cheers. That's the best picture they have of him. Like when that's his IMBD fucking picture. So that's kind of funny that he's just standing behind the main character in that scene.
Hey, remember that one time that guy was on Cheers? You're like, oh yeah, that guy. That would have been a good that guy if you knew him from Cheers.
No, he's got for acting. He's got 66 credits. This guy, but he doesn't. You know, he's probably got that little piece and everything.
Yeah.
Anybody was number
one. So moving along here, worst performance. I didn't write anybody down for this one either. Did you have a worst performance? Was there somebody you didn't enjoy in this film? I was gonna say if he fucked it up for maybe one of his first acting jobs, I'm not even sure. You could have said Meatloaf, but he did a great job. So like I can't even, you know what I mean? Like I'm just saying you would look for people like that where you're like, I don't know this guy from acting, and then you could be like, maybe he shouldn't be, because sometimes people stick people in these films. And it's just like, I'm a big fan of this guy. I'm going to stick him in my movie. Meanwhile, it's like, this guy can't act, right? Meatloaf did a great job.
There you go. It's like that guy there, like Lou, because that guy there, his last acting gig was Fight Club.
Oh, was it?
So he must have did a really shit job. That's what his last movie credit was.
So we're really fucking giving it to Lou here. We got to give Lou the worst performance as well.
Fuck, man.
What's the actor?
Like the actor's name is where the fuck was he? He was just here. The actor's name is Peter Icangelo.
There you go, Peter. You got the worst performance.
Icangelo.
Worst performance.
I don't know. Yeah, you get the stand behind me performance. That was probably his only role that he played where he was actually walking in front of everybody. He had two bodyguards.
I'm glad I thought of that off the cuff here, because fuck that guy. He's like, hey, this is my bar when he comes downstairs. Like, fuck off.
No, but you see him, right? Like, you remember him when you watch the movie, but then after you sit back and you think about it and you don't really associate them with the movie, right? So it's fucked up.
That part was gross though, when he pours all that blood all over him, like out of his mouth. Right? Like, I would fucking run out of there too. He never went back to the bar, Lou, after that. He's like, fuck this. The guys are holding and he fucking run out. All right.
All
right.
What do you think? Who won the?
Yeah, that's
who won the movie.
It's going back to you, Jay. You got a nice category there. You keep getting the good ones. Go ahead. Who won the movie, Jay?
Who won the movie overall?
Yeah.
I mean, when we said best performance, I said Edward Norton, but who stole the show is the way he acts, is Brad Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
I think he stole the show he won he won the movie in my eyes, in the sense that he did Brad Pitt, and that's what you do. I'm pretty sure when people went to watch that movie, they weren't going to watch Edward Norton, but when they seen Edward Norton come up with a performance like that, it kind of blew them away. But you were going there. What really pulled you in was probably Brad Pitt and the whole concept behind the movie, right? Fight
Mhm.
Club and all that stuff. But I still think Brad Pitt won the movie in the sense of the acting,
Mhm.
not in the sense of not performance, but in the sense of just being himself and playing throughout the movie
Mhm.
perfectly and sequenced right through. Right, he
Mhm.
never let out a character, never threw you off. It was just him, right? So that's why I like to say I give the movie to. I would like to say Marla was good too, but I mean I don't think she was. And Edward Norton, like I said, even because of the best performance, I still don't think he stole the show. Like when it came to who was the bigger show off in the movie, you know what I mean? In the sense that that's the way I look at who won the movie. I mean,
Yep.
who was the one that everybody said because the fucking he was
Mhm.
taking his shirt off, showing his fucking, you know.
Very fit Brad Pitt in this film. Very fucking
That's
ripped
what
in
I
this
mean.
film.
Well,
Yeah,
think
yeah.
of it. That's 20-year-old Brad. That's like 25, 30-year-old Brad, right? I mean, that's not like, what is he now? He's got to be almost 50, right?
Hey, listen, he's
Or,
again. I told you I was in the theater watching that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and this fucking guy took off his shirt. He must have worked out before this fucking film again. All right, this guy almost looked like back in the day Fight Club. I'm telling you, and he's like 50 years old. Christine was like, "Whoa, what the hell, Brad Pitt?" It's like, because now people don't look at Brad Pitt that way as much. I feel, but after that, she was like, "I don't know, he's still pretty fucking jacked." He was like, for 50-year-old Brad Pitt, I was impressed.
because yeah, you don't look at him like that anymore. Now he's got some tinted gray a little bit. You know what I mean? He's getting to that age where it's like,
Well, it's because
it's more of the father figure sort of thing.
during the engineering years, she sucked the life out of him, right? She fucking had that beard like you do, and people were like, "Ugh, disgusting." It's
I
true.
gotta fucking get rid of this. Fuck off with my beard, man. It's driving me nuts. I keep reaching for my face. It's
all
not.
of a sudden, like Brad Pitt has all these fucking kids that he adopted. And he's fucking old, and he's like living on a ranch. And he's fucking got a beard. He's married. And he's depressed.
Look at he still got to bang fucking Angelina Jolie and fucking
Oh, look at
and
this guy. Fucking Meatloaf. Fucking knows everything on Meatloaf. Look at this.
plus he was the Rocky Horror Picture. Yeah, okay, but that doesn't mean that I get it. But it doesn't mean that he's saying any good.
Look at some horrible acting in that movie. Fuck that. I know it's a classic, but like, other than Tim Curry, can you really? I don't know. I can't really. I'm just like, forget it. Acting in that film, the whole thing dressed up
The
like
Rocky Horror Picture Show was a little bit messed up. Yeah, that was just that was a different style movie. And if you're gonna be in that show, but he looked different in that movie too.
I
He didn't look like he does.
I don't even remember him being in that fucking movie. But you're right. I will agree.
The music. Yeah, and then he was the music.
Theatrical. You're right. He's right about that, especially for that album and all that. Yes. Thank you.
The music is, and his music is very, but I mean, it's a different style of rock, and I mean, that's why I kind of classified it as something that Rob would like, because I think it's more there. He's like, if he was asking me why I was playing more, what was he asking me? Why I didn't play more Boston and Journey?
Because those are for wieners.
Yeah. Sorry, those are the tunes that I didn't like. Those are my only plays.
No, we
in
love
case of emergency. Yeah, I know, but
we're just busting balls. We're just joking.
Your choice of music, I don't know.
Okay, so. Rob. Jesus Christ, he's fucking Meatloaf.
Holy, you want me to bring up his eye? That's probably what he's got. He's probably checking. Like,
this guy knows everything.
Yeah, but he was around to appreciate that. That's why.
All right, so my who I thought won the movie. Enough about fucking Meatloaf. Meatloaf fucking IMDb over here.
Making me hungry, yeah.
I thought David Fincher, the director, won the movie overall. Fantastic film, fantastically like edited, put together. Even though I know he didn't do all of the edit. Well, a lot of directors are in the editing room with it too. And but what I meant to say is like wonderfully filmed. Great, very well done movie. And if you're looking at, I'm a huge fan of David Fincher. If you look at what he even did prior to this, he did the movie Seven with Brad Pitt in 1995. Okay, then he did Fight Club 1999. After that, he went on to do such movies, big hits that I love is, he did The Social Network. This is 10 years later now, but he did that. He did Gone Girl. Like there's a lot of David Fincher films that I'm a big fan of. And for me, I think that this was, again, after Seven, I already thought very highly of David Fincher, but I think with Fight Club, it's just like, okay, this guy's like, for me at least, out of the films that I've seen of his, I think he definitely won this film because David Fincher being the director attached to this and smart enough to actually adapt this this book. 3 years after it came out, this film came out. The book came out 3 years prior to this, so I guess he came across the material very fucking quickly, bought it, made this film. So you know what I mean? Like, pretty impressive. And
how do you do that? Maybe you can answer that question to me. What do? They get the book and then they actually have to buy the rights and stuff for the book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they pay the writer, the creator of it, basically to option the, that's what they call optioning a film, where they buy the rights to a film. They can or cannot use it even though they are paying you. Sometimes like they just pay you and then they don't end up doing anything with it, but they want the rights to it so no one else can steal the rights from them. But sometimes it doesn't pan out, right? Because they got to sell it to the studio still too, right? So, but David Fincher at this time probably had a lot going for him in terms of his name and his brand. So he probably came to them and said, hey, listen, I believe in this material. I'm fucking David Fincher. I just did Seven with Brad Pitt, which was a huge hit. I'm doing this movie called Fight Club with Brad Pitt. It's going to be a huge hit, right? And he probably, I don't know the story behind it. I'm just a fan of a lot of movies he's done. And I think this is definitely.
Are you more of a director or as a producer?
Director. The ones he's directed. He's produced a lot of shit. But but anyways, for me, David Fincher definitely won the film. I think and again, my second answer would have been Brad Pitt. So I'm right there with you on that one. Because again,
I didn't look at it that way as to the actual producer or the any of those things, right? I think he's got some lag over there, man.
Yeah,
we talked about that like 10 minutes ago.
No, it came up. I just brought it up right now. Yeah, go ahead.
But your guy David Fincher there too. I didn't realize. I was just looking, but he does that show that I watched recently too, man. Most recently, Mindhunter.
Yeah.
Right, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool too, man. Because that's a great series. I didn't know he was part of that. He's been part of a lot of things. Unfortunately, House of Cards.
Right.
Right.
Anyways,
that's on it.
Let's move. No, I just want to move ahead here because we're running long.
We talked a lot. Go on.
Okay, another big one. Career peak, Jay. Oh no, you did. Who won the movie? Yeah, so I'll say career peak.
Yeah,
Brad Pitt.
Yeah, that's. I mean, we were just basically saying that right now when I was saying who won the movie. I think because he was at that age and he was in the prime, like he was in the middle of all the movies that he was doing. I think, or maybe no, he was already up and coming. So he's already up there with a few movies already by that time.
He was already a huge movie star, but this was in the middle of that run, like of him being a movie star, and again, him being such a cool fucking character in this film, and already being what people would consider a really cool human being and movie star, like the word movie star, you know what I mean? Not like I'm just throwing that away, that term around. Like he was a movie star, you know what I mean? Like, so what you think of when you think of the word movie star. So like this was just a part of that. Like this was in the middle of that career run of his, where he was one of the hugest movie stars in the world, arguably, right? So Brad Pitt is definitely, for me, this is his career. This is part of his career peak. Like he peaks shortly after this, I feel, because like his movies started becoming a little bit more inconsistent. But this is when he was in one hell of a run of films. For Brad Pitt, if I brought it up right here, I could probably tell you, like he was, again, this is like after Seven. He was still not that big of a deal in Seven, right? Like at that point in time. I think.
No, he wasn't. That was just because it was more Morgan Freeman. I mean, he wasn't, but Morgan Freeman was on the way out. But I mean, still, it was one of a good. It was part. Yeah, this was after this. He went on to do Snatch and.
Okay, look. And right before this, 7, 12 Monkeys. Okay.
Yeah, those two right there.
Meet Joe Black. Okay, Fight Club, Snatch.
Yeah.
Ocean's 11, that Mexican. Some people like that movie. I think it's okay, but
it was alright.
Yeah, but yeah, so there you go. Like this is like part of like a huge run when he's like the hugest like star in the world at this point. So like, yeah, this is career peak.
Yeah, he even did like TV series, like some TV series in Ocean 12. Holy fuck.
He was on
He
Friends
just kept
too.
going on and on and on.
Yeah. He was on Friends for a bit, I think, too, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, yeah. He was on Friends. He was on King of the Hill for a little bit. I think one season, right?
Yeah.
Episodes. But so, no, he kept going up from there. But then after that, he just became. No, he's just got all kinds of producing credits and stuff, right?
He's a big producer now. Yeah, exactly. So, and he gets films made, right, as a result, because he's Brad Pitt. So like he's attached to
Brad Pitt.
Well, no, but that's what it is, right? Like now,
it's true.
He mostly does producing, and once in a while he'll go and work with a big director like a Tarantino or something, right? Because he'll like, oh, okay, I'll do a couple movies here and there. He doesn't go out of his way to do anything, though, right? Only big deal fucking projects that people are going to put him in, right? So
yeah.
Anyways, okay, so our new category we just started for this episode.
Yeah.
Best clutch performance. Now this one, this is a new category. We didn't do this in the first episode. This is given to somebody who didn't have maybe the top billing performance, like an Edward Norton or a Brad Pitt in the film, but whenever they were on screen, they killed their scene.
Yeah.
Who'd you give this to?
That's the one I kind of had a little bit of a problem with, because there was a few like that were like that. I mean, I thought I was gonna say originally Marla, but the problem was that there was only a few people that really stood out to me in the actual film, as when I was looking at. I don't, there's, I can't think of one. I mean, that was one of those ones that I was yesterday thinking of, and I was trying to think of which one, and I sitting there trying to figure out and read and try to figure out what I was going through with my notes, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, she gave it her all. I think I would go with Marla, to be honest with you, because she gave a great performance. She just didn't win my heart for anything with best performance, best,
That's my answer. So there you go. That's my answer. Because
she went full out.
Because I couldn't find a part, I couldn't find a category to put her in. Like I just said, I kind of gave a category to each of these people. I gave one to Norton, I gave one to Brad Pitt, I gave one to David Fincher, and I had to give this to her because every scene that she was in, I think she did a great job. But she was a supporting actor in this film, categorized as supporting, nominated for supporting actress, right? So yeah, I gave it to her, hands down. Great performance from Helena Bonham Carter, aka Marla, in the film. Yeah, for sure. That was mine.
I mean, she doesn't have too many credits after that. I mean, she has stuff like you said in other films, but I mean, other than that, I mean, for supporting actress, I think that was a great one for her. And yeah, she's down there too on the list. I mean, there's bigger names above her that maybe we're not familiar with and stuff like that. Like what's his name? The guy Zach, the guy that plays Richard. His boss is even a little bit more well known, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of there's a lot of characters that are just in and out, so I couldn't classify them as clutch performers either as well, right? Like, I mean, they would come in quickly, but you wouldn't get them in there to do a good enough performance, right?
What's going on, Jesse?
Should you be in bed?
No, he's not the clutch performer. Well, I guess you could make an argument.
Well, every scene
he was in, he did a good job. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, if I didn't already pick him, I probably might have, right?
Yeah.
If I didn't pick him for my That Guy award, but I mean, yeah.
There you go. That answers that question. Okay, so what age the best? I got this one first. Brad Pitt's clothes. His wardrobe fucking killed it. Every fucking scene, everything that guy wore in this movie never made any fucking sense. He's wearing leather jackets with tearaway fucking pants, and like the first scene with like a Hawaiian shirt or whatever the fuck it was, right? He's wearing that fur coat at the end with a shaved fucking head. He's wearing like every scene, like whatever wardrobe they threw on this guy, it never made any sense. None of it ever matched, was coordinated together, right? it was just fun fucking wacky clothing that they had this guy wearing in every scene. So I got to go with that's definitely aged the best, in my opinion. And Brad Pitt. I mean, Brad Pitt just in general, right?
Yeah, no, I really didn't have one. I couldn't think of what aged the best because, I mean, there's a lot of things that, I mean, you really can't say that's 20 years ago, so you really can't say. It's hard for things to say they age the best in that, because there's a lot of things they do in that movie that they wouldn't be doing, or they wouldn't get away with it, But I never thought of it as like, the style and all that stuff, as you were thinking of Brad Pitt and doing that. Like you know what? To be honest with you, if you want to say age the best, he actually probably has aged the best, because he probably looks better than 90% of these fucking people still on this.
He definitely isn't, Jess. I agree.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Paul Rudd, my man crush.
Everybody, not everybody. Yeah, if not everybody now, everybody knows you and Paul Rudd, dude.
Hey, listen, he's awesome, but he's no Paul Rudd, that's for sure. But yeah, no, but that's the thing, Jay, with this category, it's very broad. You can bring up a lot of different things. That's why every time I try to explain it to you, it's kind of, you have a hard time wrapping your head around it. It seems like you can reference anything that you think is aged well, even literally from an actor in age, right? Like you could say, yeah, Brad Pitt aged the best out of this movie, right? It could be a scene, it could be a style, right? Like my other one that I have written down here is the reveal. I feel that the reveal, although that it's that he, like the big reveal of him having split personalities, even though it's coming, I was looking for cracks in the in the movie, like things where you could see it wasn't set up right, where it would kind of, like, you know what I mean, seep through, like the reveal. Like maybe you would have found out about it earlier in the film. Maybe they made a mistake somewhere. Maybe they set up a scene wrong and it made it very apparent. I don't know, man. I couldn't see it. I think it's very well done. It's very hard to tell if you didn't know that was the case in this film. Like I was looking for it. I was looking for them to slip up somewhere and make a mistake and be like, oh, they should have fucking did the scene this way. No, it honestly, I think they did a great job of making that separation.
Yeah, the screenplay worked out really great, man. I mean, I think in that part, right? They were able to keep it, like, if that time frame was a little bit like ahead of the year that it was taking place in, let's say, it kind of did everything kind of still fits into play 20 years later. If you think about it, you could still, everything fits in conjunction. Maybe the city that they're in is bigger and stuff like that, but the houses are still run down. It's still like the U.S. and where they were filming, and you know what I mean. You're still gonna, that part hasn't changed. If anything, it's gotten worse, right?
But I will say, then moving on to age the worst, I also put the reveal. I put it in both categories because, in a way, the movie loses something when you know the reveal. It loses something a little bit. I think it's still well done and still holds up because it's well done, but it does lose a little bit.
It's a big reveal, man. I keep fucking trying to figure out what the fuck a big reveal is. That was what's driving me nuts.
That he's fucking stupid. You don't know that Tyler Durden's a fake person in his head until the end.
I know. I get that part, but it doesn't. I don't understand it still to this day.
I don't know.
I get it, and I don't get it at the same time. It's
I don't know what you don't understand. I don't know what you don't understand. He's fucking schizo, and he's living a double life at night.
I get that part. I get it. It's just it's very hard to believe that's something that would happen and get away. You would, like that I could say. I can use that as our other topic, like you said, age worst and stuff when we did age best. Yeah. But I mean, I think that could be something that's probably aged the worst in that sense.
Okay.
Also, smoking in films.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't, for some reason, even though I'm a smoker, for some reason in films it doesn't do it for me anymore.
Well, they're not really allowed to on TV, on cable anymore. You're not allowed to, right? Isn't that the case? You're not allowed to show smoking and like.
I wasn't sure. Maybe I thought that's what the case was, but maybe that's why it hasn't aged well. And that's coming from a smoker, which I thought would have. I never thought I would have thought that at all.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? Like, it's a kind of a weird thing to pick as something that aged the worst. But if you think about it,
yeah,
in movies you don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
Like they were having in every scene, they were having a smoke here and there and there. It was making me want to smoke.
A perfect example of it would be, although I don't think he was smoking in the scene, would be if he was smoking on the plane, because you'd be like, that doesn't happen anymore, right? So that's a perfect example of something that if you saw in the film today, you'd be like, that doesn't hold up well. It's aged badly, right? Because that's something. Some films you can watch that aren't period pieces, and you can't tell when it was made. That's how kind of well done they are. But then there's other things where they try to be hip and of the times and make references to things that are happening at that moment in time. And if you haven't lived it, or if you don't know what they're talking about, you'll look at it now and be like, well, that hasn't really aged very well, right? You know what I mean? Like anything from racism in films to off-putting jokes that maybe aren't acceptable now, gay things, right? Like all kinds of stuff, right? Like you could make reference to that haven't aged well in films, right? So I think that's what I kind of want to get at more so with like this category, or just things, right? Literal sense. Who hasn't aged well, who has aged well. I said Brad Pitt's fucking wardrobe. It just works well, I think. Still, it doesn't make any fucking
sense. I think
sense.
it's because it's on Brad Pitt. That's why. It's because it's on him, dude. If it was on you or me, I don't think it would work.
Fair enough. Okay, so why don't you start us off then with one of our last two categories here, unanswerable questions. Since I know you have a lot of those things you don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot, man. I had was he sleeping? I didn't know in the beginning if he had fell asleep, and in the beginning it was all just a dream, huh? Or if he was awake the whole time,
right?
Because you know how he said that you process everything. You don't know what's what's your life when you're awake and when you're asleep. They all become one, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're having insomnia, right?
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
And then that they spoke to each other, which threw me off because obviously he's not speaking to himself. He's in his head, right? But is it just the narrator depicting the book?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like talking to himself in the third person.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of weird in the sense that because you're actually seeing his character, but he's explaining everything that's going on as it's happening. So I didn't understand why they did that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I mean, you can look
at the beginning. I didn't realize until I watched it this time, but who blew up his house, right?
Well, that was Edward Norton. That he set that up. Like that was him. That was. But it was technically Tyler Durden. It wasn't him. It was Tyler Durden. Alter his other self, right? Good ones though. You're right. Who knows whether or not the talking was occurring in his head, or if it was. There was times where they let it slip. If you notice, there was times where Marla, she would remember when there was a scene where he's in the basement and he's like, get rid of her. And he goes to the basement and he's like yelling down into the basement. And she's like, who are you talking to? He's like, oh, no one. And like, there's moments where it's slipping away from him. And there's moments where she catches it because Marla's the only one who was really referencing the fact that he was talking to himself at certain points of that film. He's the only one because all the other guys that were like
looking at him like he was like clueless.
Yeah, all the Project Mayhem guys, all the people that were following this guy, they just like in their heads, we don't even get to know what these guys think of him. They must be looking at this guy like this guy's a real fucked up dude, but they believe in what he believes in, like the guys that are part of that fight club. So it becomes like a cult like kind of like movement, right? So like. But like, think about it. These guys are following a fucking crazy person. Like they're seeing this guy. And there's the other scene where he's in the car before he flips. He's definitely talking to himself in the car. He's arguing with his fucking self in the car. And I don't know if you noticed this, Jay, but there's a fucking great scene when they flip and the car goes down. Brad Pitt, even though he's driving the car, gets out of the passenger side when they fall. I don't know if you ever noticed that.
No.
I can't take credit for it because when I was looking up more things about this film, somebody pointed it out. I was like, that's fucking genius. Because I didn't notice either. I've seen this film, I don't know how many times, never fucking noticed that. And then I went back and watched it, and it's true. So the car flips. He's with those two Project Mayhem guys in the back seat. Edward Norton's in the passenger side. Brad Pitt is driving the car. But technically, Edward Norton is driving the car. But in his head, he's yelling at him and he's driving. So he ends up flipping over the fucking side of the road, and they fall down like a little, like a ditch. And the car flips over a few times. They all get out. Everyone survived, but they're a little banged up.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt gets out of the passenger side once they fall, and he goes to the driver's side and then pulls Edward Norton out.
You see,
that's fucking well done. Things like that, and you're not really noticing. Again, you're watching it, but you're not even clear of like what is happening at the time, right? Like, that's smart.
Yeah, I just thought that was something like, when they have like those little fucked up parts in the movie where they mess up on something.
Yeah, no.
Right?
No,
I didn't know that was purposely done.
Right. But that's the thing. Unless you think about it, it doesn't make any sense. But you got to break it down and remember that it's only him. But I get it. When you're watching the movie, you're visualizing him interacting with somebody. So you gotta remove yourself from that and think every single scene differently. You gotta think of every single scene differently the second time you watch it. That's what I mean. So like for you trying to review it this time, break it down, I get where you're coming from. Like you ended up confusing yourself more because you were probably so deep into watching the film, you didn't really take yourself out of it a little bit and observe. Because you got to remember every scene you got to look at differently once you know the reveal. And that's why for me it held up and it didn't hold up at the same time because it takes me out of it.
I was trying to focus more on the beginning part to kind of figure out what I sort of missed.
Right.
When it comes to the end, that I didn't pay enough attention to the end, right?
Okay, fair enough.
In the sense that I actually went back to watch a little piece of the end today just because I had to figure out, so I had to figure something out on it, right?
But those are good unanswerable questions that you had because I totally get where you're coming from because we don't know.
And another stupid one.
What's
that? Do you think they can actually make soap out of fucking human fat?
Yeah. You can definitely make soap out of that. I think that's a real thing that he described.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
I was wondering because how they jump over and they steal the fat from this liposuction place. That was disgusting.
That can't be fake. What they were saying. I honestly maybe look it up because I think that's got to be real. It seems like too far fetched for it not to be. You know what I mean? Like it seems like why would you specifically say that was something that actually you can.
Well, were they using it to make soap, or were they using it to make the explosives?
Well, that was the thing. They were using that to make soap, but in the same thing, I guess that in soap you could use to make homemade explosives, like something that was in the soap itself. They explain it all in the film, like they break.
It was ammonia and stuff like that, right?
I can't recall, but I think it's a real thing. Yes, like when you talk about homemade, I had what sex?
I'm not trying to learn how to do bombs or anything, but I just was asking. That's all. Fuck.
I wrote down for my unanswerable questions: what sex act was Brad Pitt wearing the gloves for? When he sees he has got the yellow, like actual fucking dishwashing gloves on, right?
Wasn't Norton washing the dishes?
He was before, afterwards. Actually, when he went down, he was scrubbing his shirt. That's another scene. That's another scene entirely, though. I think.
Oh.
Yeah, I think.
I thought that was all part of the whole circle when they kept going around in a circle, man. Where Brad Pitt would come down the fucking stairs and she'd go up.
No, I think that's the one where he goes past the room, and then he looks in kinda, and then he comes to the door. He's like, "Hey, you want to finish her off?" And she fucking falls off the bed. She falls off the fucking bed. This guy's always fucking the shit out of her so much, and she's just falling off the bed, right? But I'm just like, what is he using the gloves for? I wonder.
It's so quick. Everything happens in like so quick, like different scenes there, and that's why that too. Even with the like when you said with the phone scene,
right?
Where all of a sudden you're there at the house.
Yeah, and my other ones that I have here are they clearly The ones you got to suspend disbelief a little bit for, and they're going to actually bring us right into the next category, nitpicks. How could he have really pulled all of this off? Okay, how could he really pulled all this off? That one man, even though I know they were saying he was sleeping like 1 hour a day, and he had insomnia, and he had day jobs and night jobs, but like the fact that he coordinated this whole network to travel all around the fucking world, all not being, not even being aware of it, because like Tyler Durden fully took over in those moments. It's pretty crazy to think that this person actually pulled all this shit off. And not only that, like in the amount of time that they are at least alluding to in the film, how didn't he die at the end? Like that's true. Like, right? Like he should have fucking died from that. And don't get me wrong, I know it kind of looks like he shot himself through the face, but it almost looked like he shot himself through the fucking neck. But either way, one of those wounds, like you wouldn't be sitting there talking like he was. You know what I mean? Like he was just talking there.
I think he just grazed himself, to be honest. I think he pussied out like when he punched himself, sort of thing, in the beginning. Yeah. You notice how he punched himself in the ear, sort of. So it was kind of like it ends with that sort of same note, like in that he didn't actually shoot himself because he's not trying to kill himself.
Which takes us right into, like I said, the last category, nitpicks. That's my only real big nitpick about this film is the ending. It's a decent ending, but I think it's here's the thing. When I looked this up, the difference between the ending and the book, the ending of the book, they make it seem like it's all cyclical, like it's going to all happen again. They leave you with this fucking feeling of dread that even at the end, he ends up shooting himself, but then he ends up waking up in like a mental hospital, okay, in the ending of the book. And then the narrator, and then when he wakes up in the mental hospital, even though like Marla came to him and all that, it's the people in the mental hospital say to him that Tyler could return still, and that's kind of that's where they leave it, where he's like, oh my god, thank god it's over, blah blah blah. But in the film, I understand he had to make a choice and be like, listen, I'm not doing another film of this. I don't want to leave it up in the air. So let's give this last scene where Marla comes to his side. He rids himself of this fucking demon, this inner fucking person, Brad Pitt. And at the same time, he kind of fails in stopping Project Mayhem from succeeding, and the whole world is crashing and burning around them as the buildings explode. And then you get the "Where Is My Mind" track at the end. Great ending, like the sequence of events and like the cinematography, how everything looks as everything's burning and crashing and burning around them, and they're both standing there. That's all great. That's all great. But my problem with the ending is it kind of just wrapped up in such a nice little bow at the end that something like that could only happen in a movie. You know what I mean? Like, this is bullshit. Like, what do you mean? Like, all this should happen and then like it's just all done now? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know the records of the financial district or whatever would be fucked from then on. That was the whole point of pulling this off. Like, but where do you go from here, right? I felt like the ending, they try to make it seem like it was the end of a story, whereas I felt it was only like the beginning, right? Like, this is old, like he may have rid himself of Tyler Durden, but he's still sitting there with a fucking hole in his face. So like, I don't know. You get what I mean? Like, I didn't love the ending. It left me wanting a little bit more. I don't know.
Well, I had a nitpick about how I understand that, but how can you get into so many fights like that and nobody? I mean, if you're punching somebody like that in the fucking head, there'd be no time to fight the next day. You wouldn't just have black eyes like that. You'd have broken hands. Nobody's wearing fucking gloves. It was a little bit unrealistic that way, so you do have to kind of think outside of it and take it into account that it's really just a movie and a story. You know what I mean? Ultimately, so it's not real. But I mean, yeah, because it was just driving me crazy how these guys are beating the shit out of each other and nobody's breaking anything except getting a few bruises. I'm pretty sure if I got hit like that in the fucking face, I would have broken cheekbones and fucking the person on the other end would have broken hands, and it just wouldn't be, that kind of was sort of a little bit weird for me since nobody was wearing gloves, and I mean, even you do that to protect your hands as a fighter, right?
I get what you're saying. There would have been a lot more fucked up people and people that weren't able to return every week. Like this guy was making it seem like he was showing up every fucking Saturday and throwing down, and maybe twice. Because if we're thinking of it,
going to work all the time.
No, but if we're thinking of it from that perspective that he thinks Tyler fought, and he also thinks he fought, Edward Norton fought, he could have potentially gotten to 2 fucking fights a night every week he went, right? Like, if you think of it that way. So, yeah, no, I'm with you. I agree. That is kind of, again, you had to stretch you had to suspend your disbelief a little bit at times.
Go outside the box, yeah, because, I mean, and think a little differently, view it from the outside, because, I mean, even as him, even though it was well narrated, it was still of a nitpick to me, because, I mean, he's talking about the story, but he's also talking about himself, which that part is driving me nuts. That the whole way through the movie, it's confusing and it drives you nuts at the same time, right?
Right.
So if you think about it, yeah, that part was a little bit of a nitpick for me, but other than that, right? I don't think I had very many nitpicks.
Yeah, no, that's the ending's the only thing I didn't love, because I just I don't know if I wanted more. I don't know if I didn't like the way it ended exactly. I don't know if I liked it less after I found out about the ending from the book. But just when I saw, even though the ending I think was well done in a sense, I didn't love the choice that they made, like what they chose to, like, again, and also because he survived, or it didn't seem like anything barely happened. Like this guy like shot himself in the fucking mouth and put a gun in his mouth, shot it, was standing and talking to that woman afterwards, and the guys were like, and then he just like, get me some gauze, and the guys were like, whoa, that guy's fucking tough. Like this guy's fucking, he's not Superman. Like, this guy shot himself in the fucking mouth. Like, I don't think you just be standing there having a conversation with somebody afterwards, right? Like, so I don't know. I thought that was a little far-fetched. And not only that, and that happened in the book too, apparently. Like, he did shoot himself. I like the ending that I heard happen in the book, because it left it open for interpretation that this could happen again to him. Like, he's not rid of him, right? Like, it's a mental illness. It's not like you can just shoot yourself and then I know metaphorically you're like, oh, he's gone now because he's like, I've killed him, right? But no, it's, you're still sick, right? You're still like,
you could still think like that for the end of this movie too. You could still think openly of it like that.
But that's why, I understand why he made that choice to make the ending like that. It works for a film. It does. It did work very nicely. Like everything he did, it did. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't my favorite. I don't know.
See, the whole thing that I got from it was that he ultimately wanted to do harm, but not to himself, being that kind of schizo that he was, or insomniac and type of because every time he had the opportunity to kill himself, he really didn't do it. He pulled just, off by a little bit. Like, he wasn't going to kill himself at the end. Ultimately, he thought that was what's going to help him get rid of Tyler himself.
Right.
Right. That's my personality, sort of disassociational behavior and stuff. Right.
Right.
That's where you think. But I ultimately think that when he did shoot himself, it was just to shoot himself so it woke him up. That's why I'm wondering if he was, ultimately sleepwalking, still doing things and being awake because he had the insomnia. You know what I mean? A lot of that stuff is where it leaves it open to interpretation, and it really fucks with me, and that's what kind of is another little bit of a nitpick of mine too.
Yeah.
Because it's true. I mean, he ultimately has an issue, but he doesn't want to hurt himself. Maybe that was like a wake up, and like I said, maybe he was in La La Land, or whatever you want to call it when you're from the insomnia.
I don't tend to feel that it's that confusing of a movie or left me with too many questions or not understanding things as much as it sounds like it did with you. Although I will say, if you do feel that way, then I think there's a reason for it, because, like I said, it's the schizophrenia angle for the film, right? Like, I think if anything, if you took away that feeling from watching this film, then in a way you got so engrossed in the film, you were so deep into the weeds, like you felt for, like you knew the character, that you fucking, that's what I mean. Like he doesn't know what was real throughout the whole film. So why would you, walking away from the film, know what was real and what wasn't and understand everything completely when the main character you've been following in this film from narration didn't understand, right? So I think it makes sense that you feel that way. I mean, I didn't get that feeling from watching this, but I think it's also because I've watched it so many times at this point that a little bit of that magic is gone for me, right? So sounds like it was a better rewatch for you because you never.
I might want to watch it again. Like I actually downloaded the fucking thing. So I might want to have to just to go over and see if I missed anything and anything I could have caught at the top of my head, right? Just to maybe fix those little nitpicks about it.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's it for our categories, guys. Basically now, I was just looking at my afterthoughts, some other thoughts I had that were outside of the categories. It looks like I kind of discussed everything I wanted to throughout this discussion, though, that I had written down here. I kind of, I brought it up at certain points of the conversation. The only thing I will say is, if you listen to the soundtrack of this film, great soundtrack, by the way. I thought the score, like the actual music during scenes, was possibly done by Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails, who does a lot of soundtrack stuff. He also did a lot of soundtrack stuff with David Fincher. Like he most notably, he did the soundtrack for like The Social Network. He did the soundtrack for Gone Girl. He does a lot of soundtrack stuff now. Trent Reznor, he does great stuff, moody fucking type music sounding scores, like background stuff to certain scenes. And if you listen, if you know Trent Reznor's kind of soundtrack work that he's done with other films, and you listen to this film, there's a few scenes where it sounds like it's Trent Reznor, but it's not. I looked it up. It's these two guys called the Dust Brothers who did the score for this film. And but then what I actually found interesting is I came upon an article, like it talked about David Fincher, the director, who was really, really into their previous album, Nine Inch Nails, and he listened to it a lot while doing the prep work for this film. So I think that whatever he was thinking in his head, maybe inspired by Nine Inch Nails and Trent Reznor, he went to these other guys who ended up doing the soundtrack for this film, because Trent Reznor didn't, I think, do soundtrack stuff at that point in time, or maybe it was his
or maybe he got it for a third of the price.
Maybe. I'm just saying, whatever I found it really interesting that he went on to work with Trent Reznor later in his career, and not only that, he was very inspired by the album in the pre-production of this film, which I read up on all of this stuff that I never fucking knew, because I could have sworn in many parts of this film that this was Trent Reznor doing the score on there, but it wasn't. So like, that's really interesting to me. Like, it's no shock. It's less shocking now that he actually went on to use him for so many of his films as a result, right? So yeah.
That's kind of, I didn't know that. I didn't look that far into the music wise and stuff like that, right? It didn't catch my eye, right? It didn't.
I wouldn't have looked it up unless I heard it sounded like Trent Reznor to me. And like I said, I know him to do other David Fincher films. So I'm like, is this also Trent Reznor? And it didn't look, it wasn't. So that's it. That was kind of interesting to me. But other than that, that's all I have to say on the movie. Anything else you have?
I thought it was a great movie.
Yeah.
Like I said, it still leaves me with fucking some unanswered questions. But I mean, even to this day, I mean, I don't know if in my head I'll totally be satisfied with those unanswerable questions that I had. But other than that, I think the movie was awesome to rewatch again. I think anybody who gets a chance to. It's on TV a lot, apparently. I don't know. Like I said, this is probably the second, maybe. I think the first two times I didn't watch it all the way through. This is the first time I actually had a chance to sit there and watch it all the way through. So it was pretty good. There's quite a few, memorable parts in that movie that you'll never forget. Like, those will go down and probably, I would think, some of them in acting history, especially with the fight beating the shit out of yourself, right?
Great film.
I'd recommend it to everybody to watch again.
Yeah.
If they really want to rewatch it.
Great film. definitely holds up. One of the cooler movies I know that I've heard people reference as like a cool guy movie. Like, you know, like people always talk about action films and all this and stuff. This is definitely one that's definitely a really cool flick. And like I said, like we said, great performances. Brad Pitt in his prime. Great film directed by a great director, David Fincher. Yeah, great stuff all around. Very good. Yeah, I really enjoyed doing this one. And that being said, before we wrap up here, I believe this was Jay's pick for the film. And so that means it's going back over to me for our next one. So let's very quickly decide upon this. I'll give you a choice here for our next one between two films, and you could tell me if you've seen them both. I think you've seen them both. If so, you can pick one. And let us know, and the viewers know what our next one that we'll be doing will be, whenever that will be, probably in a few weeks, because we got other different events coming up, guys. We have about 3 battles coming up for the next 3 weeks, so look forward to that if everything works out. Those should be interesting. All right, so I want to do a Tarantino movie. Huge fan of Tarantino. Have you seen Pulp Fiction?
That's another one I never really seen. I've never really sat and watched all the way through. I might have, but I'm pretty sure I did. Dude. It's been quite a while since it came out, right? That's another '90s movie.
How about Jackie Brown?
Never seen it, honestly.
Isn't
that weird?
See, now the rule like we've set up for this show is that we want to revisit movies that we've both seen, but I feel at least if one of us has seen it, then it still would be okay, because like you said, you don't even have a reference for like whether or not you've seen the whole film all the way through. And sometimes we've watched these and realize that you have watched them before, right? Like at first you said you'd never seen The Fucking Town, and then we went and talked about it, and you're like, oh, I have seen that movie, right? So like,
but that's the problem. Like, I'm so fucking up and into every fucking movie. Like, I've watched just about everything. Well, at least at one point or another.
Oh, yeah. So you've seen or are aware of Pulp Fiction. It seems that you. Oh yeah, that's a good one too. That is a good one. I
watched that one. I actually was just looking at it on IMDb when I was looking up references. Like, not when I was looking up.
Maybe for your next pick then, because we've already done a Scorsese film. I want to do a Tarantino film. We're doing Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction, everybody. That's the next one. Jay, you'll have to recall whether or not you've seen the whole thing as you rewatch this. Maybe
I probably have, dude. I think I'm almost 100% sure I've watched it all the way through. It's whether I remember it now, because it's been so fucking long.
Because I think we've talked about it before. That was not the one I was wondering if you've seen or not. It was more the Jackie Brown I was wondering if you had seen, because we talked about Robert Forster when we talked about the Breaking Bad stuff a lot recently. And Robert Forster's in that film, and it's one hell of a performance in Jackie Brown. And that's actually one of my, oh
yeah, I remember him in that one. So I mean, I've probably seen bits and pieces of it. So, right?
Now I don't know which one to do. Pulp Fiction is the clear, obvious, like everyone knows Pulp Fiction. That's the bigger name film out of the two. But I love Jackie Brown. Like that's one of my favorite films of his. That's like under the radar. You know what I mean? Like it's the only film he's done that's kind of different than everything else he's done. We'll work our way to that hopefully one day. Maybe I'll have to get you to watch it, and then we'll rewatch it again for the show. But let's do Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, you have to do something crazy like Pulp Fiction first before you get me to do something that's totally different from what he does.
Yeah, no, for sure. Pulp Fiction it is. Pulp Fiction's the next one, guys. So make sure you go check that movie out. If you never have, if you're going to watch it for the first time, it's a hell of a fucking movie. If you're going to rewatch it with us. It'll probably be a few weeks because we don't have a regular schedule for this show. But I don't know about you, Jay. I've been enjoying doing these so far. This has been a pretty good discussion, I think, right here. And
it's been fun. I've been loving it.
And, if anything, be patient with us, guys, because we can only get better at this movie reviewing thing, hopefully, right, as we go. But I think we've been doing an okay job. I think breaking it up into categories helps with the discussion, so we're not all over the fucking place the whole time, right? I think it kind of at least directs us through a little bit more, right?
We were all over the place, though.
But I'm open for you know what happens. But I'm open for suggestions too. So if you guys have any suggestions for the formatting of this show or kind of what you would like to hear from us when we talk about films, please let us know. I'm open for critiques for this one for sure.
For sure.
Holy fuck, Rob. That you dropped this out at the end of the show. You've never seen
show, really?
Rob, you've seen every other production that fucking Meatloaf has been in, but you've never seen Fight Club. Jesus Christ. Rob, you need to fucking watch this movie. Hopefully our discussion convinced you. It's a great fucking film. But now it's like
were we living under a stone?
The reveal's been killed now, so I don't know. It's still gonna be good though. Trust me, even if we spoiled things for you a bit. But thanks for chilling with us, and thanks for being in the chat, Rob, as always. And thank you for the couple other people that kind of dipped in and out that didn't make themselves known here. Yeah, well, you should for this one. I'm sorry to say.
Exactly.
At least you've seen Pulp Fiction. Oh, man, that would have been great if you watched it for the first time before watching the episode today, man. You should have. See, this is the thing. You need to take advantage of these things when we have a discussion because you're going to be right up in it with us if you saw the film. Anyways.
That's crazy. I'm surprised.
Rob, this is better than Meatloaf's album, Bat Out of Hell. No, his performance. All right.
And anything else before and after.
Yeah. Anyways, that's it for me, Jay. You got anything else?
No, man, that was great timing. Great time. Sorry. But yeah, no, that was I mean, I was going to say great timing for a drop in the bomb that he never watched the film, but yeah, it was just I had a great time.
JT, hook this man up. Hook this man up.
I fucking send it to you right now.
Send this guy some information, please.
You know what I did? I was stupid. All of a sudden I clicked on a link, it came up and somehow it got onto my phone. It downloaded. I didn't know. And then I went to go rent it like an idiot from Amazon. So I have the rented version that I got 48 hours still to watch.
At least you paid for a decent film, right? It wasn't a piece of shit.
I paid it. But the funny part is I paid for it and I still watched the shit version.
There you go. There you have it, everybody. The sacrifices Jay makes for this show. There you go. Thank you, Jay. All right.
I can find everything else except knowledge on the computer.
All right, guys. We'll see you guys next time. Pulp Fiction for the next one. Make sure to watch it. You got plenty of time before we talk about that one, but Pulp Fiction, that is the next one. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. Peace out.